I've spent an insane amount of time to the point that I think I might be going absolutely insane building every character from Super Smash Bros. As playable characters in Dungeons & Dragons. I started this journey over 4 years ago, but it's taking way too long. So it's time to do a mega video. This is part 2 of the mega video building every character from Smash Bros. As playable characters in Dungeons & Dragons, going through them in order of popularity and how often they're actually played in Smash Bros. Out of the 82 characters, we already hit numbers 42 through 82, so it's time to dive into the top half. But if you want character sheets for every character that I'm going to be building here, they're going to be all available on Patreon, because there I can go very in depth, but here we need to power through them. So we're just going to be covering the species, class, and subclass, along with any notable features that you really want to grab along the way. Just diving into the list, I almost missed him from the start. We have Bowser, another big king and villain. We are going to go with a Dragonborn for the species. We need to make sure we cover the fire breath at least in some way, shape, or form. He is King Koopa, so make sure to grab the noble background. And then for a class, start off with a barbarian. Go with Path of the Beast. That way you can get plenty of claw attacks and biting attacks. Then, after 4 levels of barbarian, jump into 4 levels of fighter and go with a rune knight. That way you can enlarge yourself and become Mega Bowser. Then, after those total of 8 levels, take the last 12 levels you have available and go with an Oath of Conquest Paladin. Because you're Bowser, you like to conquer stuff. At number 40, we have Ryu from Street Fighter, even though I usually just call him Ryu. His species is pretty easy, he's just a human, but he does plenty of martial arts. I mean, he's wearing a karate gi, so you gotta go with a monk. They are the most martial artsy type of class you can be in D&D. But you need to cover the fact that he can do a Hadouken, so you want to go with the most Dragon Ball Z-esque subclass in Dungeons & Dragons and go with a Sun Soul Monk. They can straight up do Ki Blasts. At number 39 on the list, we have the Wii Fit Trainer. For a species, I'm not going to go with human. They're kind of this vague idea of what a human is, so I want to lean into what I did for Mr. Game & Watch and go with a Kalishtar, which are a species that is kind of part humanoid and part dream, which kind of fits for the Wii Fit Trainer. Then, since they're essentially all about doing yoga, I feel like the most yoga-esque type of character you can be is probably just a Way of the Open Hand monk. The 38th most popular character in Smash Bros. Is Mewtwo from Pokemon. For a species, I'm actually going to go with a Reborn. Mewtwo is genetically engineered in a lab, and Reborn can kind of fall under that category. Their origins even list that you were magically resurrected, but something kind of went wrong. Then you want to do a 2-way multi-class. You want a little bit of Rogue, because then you can grab the Soul Knife Rogue, which allows you to attack with psychic blades, and Mewtwo is all about psychic stuff. Then go deep into being a wizard by taking the rest of your levels there. You're going to want to go 3 levels of rogue and 17 levels of wizard. Then, because you mess with people's minds, go with the wizard subclass, School of Enchantment. It leans a bit heavier into the psychic Pokemon style. At 37 on the list, you have the Ice Climbers. Now this one is actually really difficult because there's 2 of them. But starting with the species, I'd probably go with a dwarf. They tend to be a bit shorter in stature, and I feel like that fits. Plus, dwarves can handle that brutal cold with their usually higher constitution. Then to handle the double type of nature they would have, I was very tempted to go with a wizard so I can get Simulacrum and have a second person helping you out. But I think there's a better subclass that really fits the whole winter elements. So to get the more doubled up nature of being the Ice Climbers, I would grab a background that would give us the Magic Initiate feat to allow us to get a familiar. So you can have your twin be more of an extension of yourself through your familiar. Then to deal with the frigid biting cold, go with a Winter Walker Ranger. The Winter Walker was added in Forgotten Realms Heroes of Faerun, and they're all about dealing with the frigid cold. They have features like Biting Cold, Frost Resistance, and Polar Strikes. Then being a ranger, you can focus on strength to wield a big hammer, and you get all sorts of fun cold spells. At number 36 on the list, we have Fox from Star Fox. So to get a bit more Fox-like, I'd go with a Shifter for the species. That's the closest way you can get to being a fox. Then go with a multi-class. Go with a monk, Way of the Kensai, so you can actually get some energized energy blasts and actually utilize a laser pistol if you really want to, while at the same time getting flurry of blows so you can do that barrage of kicks that Fox can pull off. Take that for 13 levels to get a drastic amount of speed, and then finish off the last 7 levels as a creation bard, because a creation bard gets the feature animating performance so they can create a construct that is big enough for you to ride. It can fly just like your spaceship, so you have a spaceship you can ride, you have Fox's insane speed, and you have a laser pistol. It's all covered. At 35 on the list, we have Ness. For his small stature, I would go with a gnome. Then, because he's a boy genius, he can lean into that intelligence stat and go with a wizard. He has some insane defensive abilities with his reflector shield, so when you have to specialize in a type of wizard, go with an abjuration wizard. It can block tons of damage. Then make sure you grab all the spells you need for Peak of Fire and Peak of Thunder, and you can shoot lightning that you can track your enemies with Witch Bolt. You can get your Firebolt attack for Peak of Fire, and you can probably make sure to grab the Telekinesis feat to be able to move things with your mind a bit easier. Number 34 on the list, we have Min Min. You need some stretchy arms and you gotta punch people. So if we want some seriously stretchy arms for a species, go with Bugbear. They have longer reach than most other types of species. You could go with human, but I kind of like having the longer arms. Then to have some super long punches, go with a monk and go with the Astral Self monk. They have the ability to stretch out their arms further than most, and those arms happen to be of a very special astral nature, so it fits a little bit more with Min Min's style. The 33rd most popular character to play in Smash Bros. Is Isabelle. Coming from Animal Crossing and being a more dog-like creature, we're going to go with Shifter for the species because that's the go-to for a dog-like creature. Actually, looking at a picture of her, she actually looks like my dog. And we're going to go a similar route to what we did with the villager. She likes to build a town and build a village, so we're going to go with a druid and lean into a land druid. You can focus more on harvesting the land, as well as getting the spell Druid Grove to build a home. But since Isabelle is part of the local government in Animal Crossing, I would also grab Inspiring Leader, and you can actually lean into Wisdom for Inspiring Leader, which will help your druid stuff. 32 on the list, we have Pichu. Even though Pichu has some slightly notable differences in Smash Bros. From Pikachu, we're just going to be essentially rebuilding Pikachu. So go with a Harangon for the species, which is basically a rabbit type species. Then go with a Storm Sorcerer, leaning into the lightning and thunder stuff, and follow it up with some Tempest Cleric. So that way you can maximize the damage with the Tempest Cleric's ability for Channel Divinity, maximizing lightning or thunder damage. And the Storm Sorcerer aspect will allow you to change the elemental type to lightning or thunder for any elemental spell that you do. The 31st most popular character to play in Smash Bros. Is Peach or Daisy. So go with the human for the species and make sure to grab the noble background. Then she does encourage Mario quite a bit, and she's so adorable that she permanently has a heart shape in her hair. So I think the best route to go is with a bard. And go with the Bard subclass, College of Glamour. They can help encourage the party, and most of the other Bard subclasses just didn't feel right. At number 30 on the list, we have Yoshi. Yoshi was probably one of the most difficult to build for a long time for me, but I'm going to go with a lizard folk for the species, which is probably the easier part, but I wanted to make sure you covered the ability to basically swallow people. So what I was going to do is go with a druid, which can shapeshift into a creature that would be able to eat somebody. However, that just doesn't feel like enough. So instead, I'm actually going to go with a wizard. You can still get access to the spell Shape Change to change into a creature that can eat somebody if you want to. But on top of that, you can get the spell Odaluk's Resilient Sphere. This will allow you to trap somebody in a sphere if you want to. You can just as easily use Force Cage as well, but that's a much higher level spell, both of which will trap somebody just like you would trap somebody in an egg. Then the subclass was kind of the harder part. I'm actually going to go with a diviner, which may seem weird, but in almost every Mario game, when Mario is riding Yoshi, Yoshi is used to be sacrificed half the time. So to save yourself from that inevitable fate, go with a diviner. That way you can get some idea of what's about to happen in the future and ditch Mario before he winds up kicking you down a pit just so he can jump a little further. At 29 on the list, we have Robin. I actually built Robin already on this channel, and it's just a human as far as the species, and go with a blade singing wizard. They essentially have a spell book in one hand and a sword in another, so a blade singing wizard is pretty spot on. At 28 on the list, we have Princess Zelda. Zelda is obviously a princess, and she's an elf. So we're going to go with an elf for the species, but when you have to specialize the type of elf, go with a high elf. They tend to be more noble in nature, and then follow that up with the actual noble background. Then, because of Zelda's general abilities, I think the best class and subclass for her is actually a cleric, since the original form of Zelda in Smash Bros. Comes from Ocarina of Time, where she was a sage and she was very heavily tied to light abilities. So go with a cleric and go with a subclass of being a light cleric. At 27 on the list, we basically have a copy of Ryu from Street Fighter with Ken. So go with the exact same thing. Go with a human and a Sun Soul monk. At 26 on the list, we have Kirby. Kirby's a little more difficult, but I have built Kirby before. For a smushy blob, choose a Plasmoid from Spelljammer, which can fit inside of basically everything. And then you want to make sure you cover some solid bases with Kirby. So start off with 2 levels of fighter. This will give you a fighting style and give you proficiency in all weapons and all armor, so that way you can actually wield a sword whenever you need to. But then follow it up with 18 levels of Wild Magic Sorcerer. You can get plenty of transforming spells when you need to with things like Polymorph, but Wild Magic allows you to add a bit of chaos and have tons of things you can add to your arsenal depending on whatever you suck up with your ability. Number 25 gives us Captain Falcon. So choose human for the species, go with Flaming Fist Mercenary for the background, since he has a flaming fist he wields all the time, even though it's more of a name and less of an ability as far as the background in D&D. Then for a class, go with an Oath of Glory Paladin for 8 levels. Paladins can now smite with their fists, so being able to do a Falcon Punch is a much easier as a Paladin. And as a Paladin, you do get Fine Steed, so you have a mount that you can ride, since Captain Falcon is from F-Zero, which is a racing game, so you need something you can ride at high speeds. Path of Glory can enhance your speed even more, because Oath of Glory is more of a speed-focused subclass for Paladin. And in general, Captain Falcon kind of feels like he's looking for glory. Then followed up with 12 levels of Bard, going with the College of Lore. Bard is just because he's a bit of a showboat, and by going with College of Lore, you get early access to other spell lists. And we really just want Investiture of Flame, so you can do more fiery punches. Number 24 on the list gives us Sonic. Sonic is so intense as a character build that I've built him twice, and I've managed to break the speed of sound both times. In my more recent build, I chose Tabaxi for the species because they're the fastest species in D&D, with feline agility allowing them to double their speed for the turn. Go with Warrior of the Open Hand Monk for your starting class, which you want to take for 14 levels, because they have the ability to dash without using any action or bonus action if you do it just right. Monks in general are insanely fast, and you can get plenty of punching and kicking. Follow it up with 2 levels of fighter just to make sure you get action surge, so you can use an action twice in a single turn. Then follow it up with 4 levels of blade singing wizard, because when you activate a blade song, you can move even faster. You have a bunch of other spells and stuff to throw in, along with a handful of items, which I included on the character sheet, but I spent way too long building them before, so just check out that video or check out the character sheet on Patreon. We got to keep on moving. At 23 on the list, we have Ridley, and apparently they get their namesake from the similar sounding name from the protagonist from Alien. You want to be a bit more draconic, so go with a Dragonborn for the species, and just go with a Draconic Sorcerer, because eventually you'll be able to get some wings. At 22 on the list, we have Incineroar from Pokemon. Go with a Leonin for the species, which are basically lion type creatures. And then you can go with a straight up barbarian and choose the Path of the Storm Herald for the subclass. Path of the Storm Herald allows you to be an elemental barbarian and you can do plenty of fiery stuff. But because Incineroar is kind of styled like he's a wrestler or a luchador, I would make sure to grab the grappler feat along the way, because that's very heavily leaning into that wrestler style. At 21 on the list, we have Falco from Star Fox. So we're going to repeat what we did with Fox, but with a different species. Go with an Aarakocra for the species because they're bird creatures and they can fly, but the rest still stick exactly the same as you did with Fox. Grabbing Way of the Kensai Monk for a laser blaster and plenty of speed and melee attacking, and then follow it up with some creation bard so you have a spaceship to fly around it. At number 20 on the list, you have Lucina. She's a straight up sword fighter. So go with a human for the species and go with a fighter for the class with the champion subclass. I was tempted to go with a battle master, but her final smash in Smash Bros is called critical hit, and champion fighters are much more focused on critical hits than most other styles. So I think that fits a bit better. The 19th most popular character is Palutena, or Palutena, or Palutena, however the heck you pronounce it. She's literally a goddess of light. She comes from the Kid Icarus game. So in order to build her, I think the best way to go is an Aasimar, since they're the closest to being godly for the species. And then, because she's a goddess of light, just go with a light cleric. It's pretty easy. The 18th most popular character to play in Smash Bros is Corrin. Corrin comes from the Fire Emblem game, and you have a weird mixture of transformation with sword fighting. So grab a couple levels in Fighter so you have your solid sword fighting ability, then follow it up with a solid amount of Sorcerer, leaning probably into being a Draconic Sorcerer for the more dragonish nature. Just make sure to grab spells like Alter Self to change your hand into that weird thing that you lash out with, and make sure to grab a spell like Elemental Weapon to cover your sword in fire. 17 on the list gives us Banjo-Kazooie. And I should note that because there's so many characters in Smash Bros, we're 17th on the list, and the percentage of time played as Banjo-Kazooie is still only 1.51%. But Banjo-Kazooie, I've actually built on this channel. I'm going to go with a bugbear because Banjo is essentially a bear type creature. And to make sure you get Kazooie, you can go with a Beastmaster Ranger. After 2024, the Beastmaster Ranger is far better than it used to be, and it's actually playable. You can make sure to give yourself a bird-type companion to help you out in battle, and Banjo-Kazooie is surprisingly fitting because you're fighting a witch anyways, and that's not unheard of in D&D. At 16th on the list, we have Wolf from Star Fox. So we're going to go the same route we did with every other Star Fox character because we need the same stuff. Go with a shifter for the species, that way you can lean into something a bit more wolf-like. Go with a solid amount of Monk, go with Way of the Kensai, and make sure you're just doing more scratching with your claws than you are with punching. Then finish it up with a solid amount of Creation Bard so you have a spaceship to fly around in. Number 15 on the list gives us Ike. Ike is another sword fighter from Fire Emblem, but he's much more about taking a big charge-up attack that can sometimes wield some fiery destruction. So instead of going with a fighter like I did with many of the other sword fighters, I'm going to go with a paladin. That way you can do a smite that would do some fiery damage if you want to. In the story of where Ike comes from in Fire Emblem, he seems very devoted to me, so I would go with an Oath of Devotion paladin, which gives you features like Sacred Weapon and stuff like that, but you can just make sure you also grab smites that'll give you fire damage and things like Elemental Weapon. And it seems like at this higher end of the list, they just really like sword fighters, because at number 14, we have Chrom. Keep it simple, go with a human for species, and go with a fighter, and just go with a battle master. They give plenty of good sword techniques. Then 13th on the list, we have Roy, another straight up swordsman that can do some fiery stuff. So again, go with a human and go with a paladin, getting you smites that can do some fire damage. But for a subclass, Roy is brought into the story being assigned to defend someone. So I think the best defender as a paladin is going to be the Oath of the Crown paladin. They're one of the best tanks in D&D. Then at number 12 on the list, we have the hero from Dragon Quest. I built the hero pretty recently, and I actually figured out how to do 4 spells in a single turn as hero, which still sticks to rules as written, surprisingly. But you have a solid mix of sword fighting, using a shield, and a decent amount of spells. So the best way to go for that is go with a human fighter and go with an Eldritch Knight. They get plenty of spell casting, and you can still wield this sword and shield while you're doing it. Number 11 on the list, we have Byleth. Byleth is all about having different weapons for different situations. And I think the best route to go for this is by going with a Warlock and making sure to grab the Eldritch Invocation, Path of the Blade, so you can summon a weapon into existence. Grab everything you can to improve that, including the subclass Hexblade. There used to be an Eldritch Invocation in the 2014 version of D&D that would allow you to do ranged weapons as well, but unfortunately that didn't really get ported over, at least not yet. So what you can do is still use the cantrip True Strike to shoot your bow if you want to, but you can just as easily roleplay that shooting an Eldritch Blast as you shooting an arrow from your bow. At number 10 on the list, we have another basic sword fighter with Marth. Go with human, go with fighter, and go with a battle master. I don't want to keep saying it over and over again, but it probably will happen even more. At number 9 on the list, we have the Inkling. Inklings are essentially squid people, so I was gonna try and figure out some way to rebuild a Mind Flayer, but they don't really have many Mind Flayer abilities, so I think the next best option is going with a Simic hybrid. They have 2 animal enhancements as they level up, one at 1st level and one at 5th level. The first one we can grab is Underwater Adaptation. As a squid type creature, you want to have some swimming speed and the ability to breathe underwater. And then at 5th level, you can grab Grappling Appendages. So that way you have 2 special appendages, aka you just have more limbs to be able to reach out with, since you do have squid-like abilities. Then to lean into the squid-like nature, go with a Warlock. Make sure to grab spells like Blindness, Deafness, so that way you can squirt ink in people's eyes so they can't see, and Far Step or Misty Step, so that way you can teleport along the ground wherever your ink has already been spread. And for a subclass, go with Fathomless. They're all about tentacles and underwater stuff, so having more appendages at your disposal probably fits. Just make sure that when you're blasting out ink, that's your Eldritch Blast going to work. And number 8 on the most popular characters to play in Smash Bros, we have Link. Go with an elf for the species, and since he's often coming from the woods, go with a wood elf. This gives you a slightly enhanced speed for any speed running of a Zelda game. And then when I built him, I actually leaned into basically every version of Link. Now, if you want to just go with the Link in Smash Bros, you can just go with a Hunter Ranger. It's pretty straightforward, you get all the basic stuff. But if you want to lean into a bit more of what Link does throughout the series of The Legend of Zelda, go with 9 levels of Hunter Ranger. This gives you plenty of using the hero's bow and using your iconic sword as much as possible. Then take 8 levels as a Forge Cleric. This allows you to focus on still using Wisdom, which leans into what you can do as a Ranger, but Forge Clerics have the spell Fabricate. So you can create stuff just like you have in Tears of the Kingdom. Then you follow it up with 3 final levels as a Circle of the Moon Druid. That way you can lean into a tiny bit of Twilight Princess and be able to turn into a wolf. Next up on the list at number 7, we have Snake from the Metal Gear series. This was an interesting build that I did quite a while ago, but for the species, I still went with human. Then I went with Rogue for the sneaking around you're going to have to do. And to make sure you can sneak around as much as possible, I went with an Assassin Rogue. You even get the ability Imposter, so you can kind of sneak and pretend you're a box if you really need to. Then I followed it up with 6 levels of Monk, because he does do plenty of punching and kicking. Then for a subclass, to make sure you're really good with your weapons, go with Way of the Kensai. It just makes them better with their weapons. Then at number 6 on the most popular list, we finally broken the 2% played mark, because as far as percentage played, this character's finally played over 2% of the time, and it's Young Link. So we got to do something pretty similar to Link, but since Young Link doesn't appear in Tears of the Kingdom, we got to keep it a little more simple. We could still go with a Wood Elf, but keeping with him being smaller, but kind of permanently smaller, even though he's actually just called Young Link and there's a reason he's younger. I want to keep him as small as possible by going with a halfling. Then, because you don't need to worry about Twilight Princess or Tears of the Kingdom, you can go with purely Hunter Ranger. You get plenty of what you need from going through the forest and all of the abilities that pop up in Ocarina of Time. You could grab some druid with some moon druid for transforming with masks from Majora's Mask, but I think it's better to just stick with pure hunter ranger here. Then at number 5 on the most popular characters list, we have Ganondorf. And this is another character I actually went with Shifter for the species because he does have the ability to shift into a pig type creature. He is much more about conquering than anything else, so I went with an Oath of Conquest Paladin. This will give you charge up attacks like Ganondorf can do in the Smash Bros games, but at the same time feel more nefarious and like he wants to conquer the world. Then, because he's known as an evil wizard in so many of the Legend of Zelda games, I would only grab 12 levels in Paladin and followed up with 8 levels in Wizard. But to make sure that you are getting the most bang for your buck, I would lean into the War Magic Wizard. This can make you much harder to hit and be much more of an up close and personal attacking at melee kind of wizard. Then at number 4 on the most popular characters to play in Smash Bros, we have a character from one of my favorite games of all time, Joker from Persona 5 Royal. I made an almost feature-length video about building every character from Persona 5 Royal in its entirety. I love this game so much. But to build Joker specifically, I've actually built him twice. However, I like what I did this second time around a little bit more. Start off with 11 levels of Rogue. This allows you to choose a subclass, and as a Phantom Thief, I think it's only fitting you become a Phantom Rogue. This comes from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and it even gives you a feature at 9th level called Tokens of the Departed, so you can collect soul trinkets from creatures you defeat. Just like you're collecting personas, you can still use a pistol and a dagger as a rogue, which is very spot on for Joker, and then you can take 9 levels of Warlock and go with the Archfey Patron. You can go with Pact of the Chain, so you have the Find Familiar spell for even more personas, and you can enhance those abilities with Investment of the Chain Master. And you can amp up stuff even more by having more use with your dagger, grabbing Pact of the Blade at the same time, since you can now grab more packs if you need to. You can grab Otherworldly Leap to have your grappling hook thing, Eldritch Smite to smack really hard, Thirsting Blade to get multi-attack, Mask of Many Faces so you can disguise self, aka wear your mask as a Phantom Thief, and grab tons of summoning spells so you can summon all sorts of creatures as a Warlock and have each one of them be different types of personas that you're capturing. I love that game. Then at 3rd on the most popular characters to play in Smash Bros, we have Terry from Fatal Fury. He's a human as a species, but he's a pretty solid martial artist, so we're gonna go with a monk. But on top of all of that, he does have some fiery punches he can pull off, so we're gonna go with a Warrior of the Elements monk, so that we can do plenty of fire punches. And you can even do that thing where you can shoot fire along the ground, because a Warrior of the Elements monk can have a ranged fiery attack if they really want to. Then at number 2, of the most popular characters to play in Super Smash Bros, we have Bayonetta. Now I have built her before on my channel, but there's a slight difference I need to put in, and that's with her species, because she's definitely a Hexblood. She's a witch in Bayonetta, and that's literally what a Hexblood is. Hexbloods come from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. They can get some hex magic, and to lean into that even more, we're going to go with a Warlock for the class. That way you get her pistols that she can shoot with her hands or with her shoes, and the rapid fire nature leans into using Eldritch Blast, which allows you to blast out more and more beams as you level up throughout your build. Then, because she has the ability to summon hair type constructs from herself, I think a great way to do this is with a Fathomless Warlock, since they can summon a tentacle that comes up and hits enemies. You just have to pretend that tentacle is made of hair. At the number 1 most popular character to play in Smash Bros, being played 3.64% of the time, which is a lot with over 80 characters, we got another swordsman, but it's got one of the most heavy-duty swords in Smash Bros because it's Cloud from Final Fantasy VII. Now for a species, you could go with something like a Reborn, but personally, I think it's better to go with a human. You want the extra feat when you're choosing to be Cloud, because as a human, you get to choose an origin feat. So you got to grab Magic Initiate and dive into the Cleric spell list. But you want to make sure that you're leaning into using Intelligence with this. That way you can grab Word Radiance to slash all around you, grab Guidance for another cantrip, but since he can slash out and deal this bolt of radiant energy, you want to be able to grab the spell Guiding Bolt. For the background, grab the Soldier background. As far as Cloud knows, he was part of Soldier, even if his memories were altered a bit. And then for a class, go with Fighter and lean into being an Eldritch Knight. Definitely play up the fact that you have a massive sword and grab the feat Great Weapon Master so you can add your proficiency bonus to your weapon attacks with a big greatsword, and you can grab plenty of spells to enhance what you do as an Eldritch Knight, leaning into different types of materia, grabbing things like Fireball, Fly, Haste, or boosting up your damage with things like Spirit Shroud, or getting different summons throughout Final Fantasy with spells like Summon Fae, Summon Construct, or Summon Elemental. And that's finally how I would build every single character from Smash Bros. In Dungeons & Dragons. This has been a labor of love. I have been doing this for so long, and I'm happy that I finally built every single character. They're all going to be available on Patreon with all of their character sheets and D&D Beyond links, and I'm going to get to work on doing that right now because there's over 80 that I got to be uploading there. So thank you so much for coming along with me on this journey, and if you made it all the way to the end of this insane ride throughout Smash Bros, let me know by hitting that like button. And I'll be here hoping you roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next D&D session.